Hello, welcome. Happy Friday and happy 420. It's right on the dot here, folks. We are live for another episode of the Cole Memo. I hope you're all doing well. It's been a tough end of year for me, but we are not going to get into that. I hope you are all set to have a happy holiday season. I'm going to be doing some traveling, so this may be our last episode until the new year. We will be back soon, but until then, stay well and stay safe. Today, we're going to be talking about the uncomfortable reality in a so-called legal state, my home state. Despite legalization, cannabis arrests continue in the state of Illinois. And I know it's an issue that I've focused on for years at this point, and it's something I've been super passionate about, but there's been recent reporting on it, which is great. I always love more focus on the subject. So we're going to be discussing that in today's episode. As always, you can check out my work at colememo.com. Consider supporting the show at colememo.com/support, and feel free to call in live at colememo.com/live. The lines are open. However, we're going to watch this report first before we start hearing your thoughts. Since we are live, though, feel free to comment below and we can display your comment. I'll throw a few up here. Shout out to a fellow person named Cole. Greetings. And I think you're going to find this person says, stop arresting people for pot, period. I think they're going to find a lot of value in this episode because we are going to be unpacking what's driving the continued criminalization of cannabis in Illinois, what legalization did, perhaps more importantly, what it didn't change. I want to hear your thoughts. Like I said, we'll be taking your calls right here on this episode of
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo. The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo is what allows this whole thing to go on.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
Hey, this is Tommy Chong, and you're listening and watching The Cole Memo.
All right, let's get into it. Recent reporting by NBC5 focuses on the continued criminalization of cannabis in Illinois. Let's watch the report. Let's turn on the volume for the report.
Today, President Trump signed an executive order that reclassifies marijuana as a less dangerous drug. Now, under longtime federal law, marijuana had been in the same class as heroin and LSD, but now it's categorized alongside Tylenol and steroids.
Marijuana or cannabis is still not federally legal, and even though it is permitted here in Illinois, tonight the NBC5 investigative team has found dozens of people still imprisoned here for marijuana crimes.
Investigative reporter Chuck Gowdy is here with that story. Chuck.
Alex Allison, with marijuana legal or decriminalized now in Illinois and most states, you'd think the big police pot bust would be a thing of the past. But tonight, NBC5 investigates the surprisingly high number of people who are locked up in Illinois prisons for cannabis crimes. Arrests and prosecutions for marijuana continue, and there is a pot prison population growing each year. In Illinois, you are unlikely to go to jail for this unless you are caught using it in public places, driving under the influence, possessing large amounts and selling it, or consuming while underage. And tonight, the NBC Chicago investigative team has learned that dozens of people are imprisoned in Illinois directly for marijuana-related crimes. Our exam of this state prison data shows 94 men and women are currently locked up in state prisons for cannabis crimes, many for 4 or 5 year terms, but some for longer. Tonight, this man is serving out a 24-year sentence for cannabis trafficking. In 2010, Antonio Sustaita was pulled over by downstate police and found to be carrying more than 2,500 grams of marijuana. Despite marijuana being legalized during his sentence, the now 55-year-old Sustaita is behind bars tonight here at the Robinson Correctional Center, finishing up his 24-year marijuana sentence. His projected parole date, according to state records, is 5 weeks from tomorrow. after serving more than 2 decades. It is this kind of stiff punishment that Illinois State Representative LaShawn Ford of Chicago says is concerning, and that President Trump's reclassification of marijuana today does nothing to help.
There should be a social justice move, a criminal justice reckoning, so that this is no longer a harm to communities like the south and west sides of Chicago. And the criminal justice system has impacted many Black and brown people over the years in every state of America. And so if Trump is serious about doing something about cannabis, he would not just what you call reclassify, but he would declassify it and make sure that it is legal in America.
To that point tonight, state prison records show there are dozens of new prisoners being locked up in Illinois facilities each month to serve sentences for marijuana violations, in most cases for exceeding state laws that regulate how much marijuana you can have and where it can be consumed. Some Republican legislators in Washington tried to encourage President Trump not to loosen the reins on weed, telling the president it will worsen America's addiction crisis, make roads more dangerous, enable drug cartels, and send the wrong message to children. But Mr. Trump ignored his party colleagues and signed the executive order anyway, which is the typical MO at the White House these days.
It's been a debate for decades, so a huge move today.
A big move, but not the final move.
Right.
Still doesn't legalize it federally.
Right. Thanks, John.
Okay.
So, very interesting report. I hope you found that valuable. I certainly found it interesting. And like I say, it's something that I've focused on a lot over the years. It's something I'm passionate about. And, you know, I'm curious what you all think. You can call in now at colememo.com/live. Absolutely happy to bring up any perspectives. Look, like I said, I've been covering this for years at this point, and a project that I am super passionate about where I really gave a focus to this specific issue is my mini documentary, which you can watch now for free at colememo.com/minidoc. It's something that I have been screaming about now for years. And the reason I came up with the mini doc is because I felt like if anybody ever asked me about why I was so frustrated with cannabis, I wanted to be able to point them to something that sort of was able to go through all of my issues in sort of a chronological order, or at least in a systematic approach, because depending on the day you ask me a question like that, depending on how often you watch the show, you know that I can rant and ramble and go all over the place. So the whole goal with the mini doc was to sort of have a focused approach with citations for everything that I cover. And I specifically covered the continued criminalization of cannabis. So let's watch a brief clip from the mini documentary, and then I want to get to audience questions. And once again, you can call in right now at colememo.com/live. Would love to hear your thoughts on the matter, or if you have questions, you know, feel free to call in. It's super easy to call in. You don't have to share your name. You don't even have to turn on your video. Let's learn a little bit about the continued criminalization of cannabis in Illinois. So, where did Illinois go wrong?
There's still penalties involved and included in this bill that could result in criminal action against people who may not understand what legalization actually means in implementation form.
Why are they arresting so many Black people for something that seems to be legal there?
Because it's $1 billion industry for this state, and because the state wants to protect its revenue stream that it's getting from the legalized sale at dispensaries. That's why.
Is it actually legal?
So there are still possession. If you read the statute, there were possession limits put in the statute.
The program also includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for a possession if they, go beyond the legal amount. So things are legalized, but it's not legalized completely. I don't know that we need to continue to put limitations on possession as we move forward. But as of now, and based on statute, that would be illegal to have a certain level or possession amount.
It's important to understand that small amounts of cannabis had been decriminalized by then Governor Bruce Rauner in 2016, almost 4 years prior to the new law taking effect. Under that system, possession of 10 grams or less of cannabis was punishable by a small civil fine between $100 and $200. According to legal professionals, under this old system, possession of a few grams more than the legal limit of 10 grams simply incurred a small civil fine. Under the new law, however, possession of a few grams over the legal limit, let's say 32 grams, is not punishable by a small civil fine, but a Class A misdemeanor and up to a year in jail.
Right to jail, right away.
So I just want to pause it for a moment to highlight that there was a period of time where cannabis penalties were actually lesser than if you exceeded your possession limit by a small amount. It was just like, whatever, it might be a fine. But like I say, now it's a Class A misdemeanor that can end you up with up to a year in jail. That's what that report focused on. Most of the arrests have to do with people exceeding their possession limits. And I would just say that, I realize that there are similar concepts to possession limits with other drugs, specifically like a prescription. You should only have the amount you were prescribed. But even tobacco and alcohol, people have sent me signs in Illinois that say, if you're buying too much cigarettes, because people will leave the state of Illinois to buy cigarettes and come back, that you can actually be charged with a crime. Here's my point. I want there to be parity, not like making fun of it, parity, like parity. In other words, so let's just say you have roughly 100 joints of cannabis, and let's say that those joints are a gram each. Having over 100 grams of cannabis in Illinois is a felony. But with cigarettes, you don't hit felony territory unless you're moving like 1,000 unstamped packs. So that's like 20,000 individual cigarettes. That's all I'm saying, guys. That's all I'm saying. If you sell 10 of those cigarettes in Illinois, you get a felony. Marijuana cigarettes, I should say, 10 joints. That's ridiculous. And we're going to continue this brief clip from the mini documentary. Cannabis Critique asks, what's the justification of possession limits? Just that they suspect you are selling if you have X amount. That's what law enforcement says. But I agree with Miggy. Yeah, purchase and possession limits are stupid. But yeah, that's what law enforcement says. I think if we're going to do that, there should be some parity between the laws that we have on the books. And I also understand that, this legalization is a start, right? It may not be the end product, if you will. This is stuff to work for and towards. But that's why I'm talking about this, and that's why I'm glad you guys are all thinking about this. Really quick, Miggy asks, Cole, as a smoker, was Illinois legal when you started smoking? No. It wasn't even medically legal when I started smoking. So I grew up in times, and that's that right there. Thank you, Miggy, for asking that problem. I never had a problem with acquiring cannabis. I have never had an issue purchasing cannabis. My issue has always been that I have to look over my shoulder, or if a cop gets behind me on the way back, I'm nervous. And guess what? I'm still nervous to this day because of stupid things like the Supreme Court saying that they can still search your car if it smells like raw cannabis. The fact that there are just so many different ways that you can get in trouble for cannabis. I just, the report that we just watched talked about somebody that's still in jail. They were in jail before cannabis was legalized. It's been legalized, and they're still using a 24-year sentence. Apparently, they're going to get out in a few months. It just so happens I've actually had somebody similar on the podcast. They were also sentenced to a 24-year sentence for a nonviolent cannabis offense. Fortunately, they got out due to good behavior. You can listen to those episodes at colememo.com/isitlegal. It started off with me interviewing his mom. And she was telling me, she was kind of like playing the middle person, telling me about his progress because he couldn't speak to me directly in prison. We tried to arrange a phone call, but we couldn't make it happen. Ultimately, he got out. But the point is, in all the time, first of all, he just lost out on his 20s and early 30s. Second of all, he saw sex offenders and murderers go in and out before he did. This is what I'm talking about. And this is why I get so frustrated on this topic. There's just still no parity. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not saying that cops can't arrest people for cannabis anymore. And I don't think that's what any of you are saying either, just to be clear. But it's just, it gets frustrating sometimes because even today, somebody commented on my social media and it's like, they said something to the effect of, well, they just made the wrong decision. It's legal. They should have just gone to the store and bought it. It's like, it's really simple to say. It's really, really simple to say. The thing is, arrests continue in South and the west sides of Chicago, like Representative Ford said, but you don't even have to take me or Representative Ford for our word. The University of Illinois, and first of all, the Chicago Tribune reported that arrests continue where they were happening in the past. So there was no change in enforcement. These marginalized communities continue to be criminalized. Then the University of Illinois backed up that data. And most recently, I talked about the fact that I've been working with the Cannabis Research Institute at the University of Illinois in Chicago. And I'm hoping that they continue this research. And that's why I was really happy when this report came out today. Yeah, I'm going to get back to the comments, but I want to finish this clip because it's just a short segment about the continued criminalization of cannabis in Illinois.
There's something wrong. Make it a fine-only offense, I guess. I mean, if you want to make it I don't think you should make it an offense at all.
Sure.
But if you do want to make it an offense, like, do we really have no tools other than criminal law?
Right.
You know, give them a ticket. All of these criminal laws still exist.
Mm-hmm.
They're all still enforced. To fall back into the criminal law, the pre-existing criminal law that uses jail time and probation and high fines as a mechanism of enforcement, we're not being progressive.
Yeah.
Like, we're saying we're progressive as a state on cannabis, but we're obviously not living up to that if our only tool for enforcement is criminal law.
Before the Illinois legislature voted on a proposal to tax and regulate cannabis, State Representative Carol Ammons publicly voiced concerns about the legislation. She indicated that if Illinois were to pass this into law, that the state would fail to fully legalize cannabis.
I mean, I think it's a step forward in the right direction, but it does not completely legalize marijuana in the state of Illinois. And so I was really concerned about that. And I wanted to make sure that the public understood that the bill itself still included points where criminalization could take place.
I thought that when we pass legislative measures, we would legalize completely, which we have not done. And we've seen people continuously be charged with having too many plants in their basement. The reality is, if you say this thing is legal, if I can grow 6 broccoli plants and nobody come and arrest me for it, why can't I grow 6 marijuana plants in my backyard? Why would I be arrested for that? Except that the cannabis industry that is able to make it illegal for me to do what I'm doing so that they can corner the market. That's all it is. And we've seen this over and over and over again in so many ways.
According to the Chicago Tribune, early drafts of the Illinois Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act included provisions which would allow all adults to cultivate cannabis at home. But this language was ultimately removed from the final language of the law due to objections from licensed cannabis cultivators and law enforcement. Currently, only medical cannabis patients are allowed to grow cannabis at home, and even then, the activity is heavily regulated with strict penalties for non-compliance.
If we just shut down the idea of home grow, that's wrong. The fact that a person actually grows cannabis at their home, and to think that we can actually send the police there to arrest them. And if growing a plant of cannabis is something that they enjoy, they should be able to do it.
The way I like to say it, and I want to see if you're down with this, I always say cannabis is not legal until we can grow, possess, use as much as we want, need, or please.
Wow. People would say, well, that means that we can have cannabis growing in fields like corn. Would that be okay? I mean, would it hurt anybody?
I think there had been kind of a understanding amongst people that decriminalization is like a step towards legalization. And my take on it, after having seen Illinois, which claims to be one of the most progressive states on cannabis, decriminalization is the goal beyond legalization. So what legalization did in Illinois is it did not repeal any cannabis law. That might be legalization, but it's not decriminalization because all of the crimes still exist. pretty innocuous, innocent use or possession of cannabis has the exact same penalties and consequences as it did before legalization, because maybe you have not stayed on the tightrope as much as you should. Even since the last time we talked, I've talked with prosecutors about this. And the attitude I've gotten is like, how hard is it just to obey our rules? Which has always been the case. How hard is it just not to smoke cannabis? How hard is it just not to possess it? I don't want you to come crying to me.
So the tightrope, it's hard to stay on the tightrope. Definitely in many cases it's hard, and we can talk about that. But in some cases, my favorite one that we'll be talking about today, it's arguably impossible.
Right.
And I'm talking about
Illinois Supreme Court will soon decide whether the smell of pot is enough reason for police to search a car.
Even if, say, the driver were to say, yeah, it's right here. I have the cannabis in this old prescription pill container, which is child resistant. It's got the child resistant top. It's sealed. Is that not good enough? If the officer says, I can smell it, the officer can then effectuate an arrest, put the person in handcuffs, take them to jail, make them post bond because they've committed a Class A misdemeanor punishable by a year in jail. So the point of this whole rant that I'm going on is that we have a law in Illinois that says that you can possess and transport cannabis in a vehicle, but only if it can't be smelled. I think it's just a skeleton key for probable cause. It's just a probable cause generator for police. And before you accuse me of being conspiratorial or, being a whack job who thinks that this is all some dark magic to give police probable cause, I've seen it. I've represented people and taken their cases through the court system who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smelled cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis.
Right.
Or not because you have too much cannabis. Or not because you're high on cannabis. But because I can smell it, and that's it. So that's where we're at right now in Illinois. And I hope it changes.
Just to put a finer point on that, something you've mentioned and I've experienced is independently, so I don't think it can be totally chalked up to anecdote. If you've purchased a product from a legal dispensary, those containers are not odor-proof.
Not even close. Some of their cannabis that I've bought before is in a glass jar. It's like a little glass jar that you might get a cosmetic in.
Yeah.
Kind of a loose fitting plastic cap.
Right.
You put that in your car and come back in a half hour, you can smell it easily. And if it's 90 degrees outside, it smells like, Cheech and Chong's lowrider. It's way over the top smelly.
Hey man, am I driving okay? I think we're parked, man.
The fact that arrests are still happening, that does point to the fact, and you looked at this as well, the illicit market remains strong. And a lot of people, different depending on the demographic, but a lot of people are still turning to that illegal market to obtain their cannabis, right?
That's correct. The Tribune did a nice story a couple of years back. Their angle on this was that the arrests in Chicago were occurring in places where there weren't dispensaries. So we took another look at that again. We updated that information and found that that's still the case. And that suggests that one reason that people turn to the illegal market is that it's just more convenient for them. They don't have a dispensary near where they live. And unfortunately, at least that's true in Chicago, the lack of dispensaries happens to be in neighborhoods that are primarily ethnic minorities and poorer neighborhoods. That's still a concerning issue. And one of the criticisms of Illinois' tax act, the Cannabis Tax Act, is that the taxes are so high that cannabis is more expensive to get in a dispensary, even if you have one convenient to you. And so it's actually just cheaper to go and buy it from your local dealer who you may have been buying it from for years. And so we found that those are several of the reasons that people continue to buy illegally: convenience, price, and having a trusted dealer that they've used for a long time.
Attorney goes, he understands that he can't be smoking and his cannabis flower shouldn't be open. And I was like, I'd like to say for the record that I was not smoking and my flower was not open.
Listen to stories from people affected by the ongoing criminalization of cannabis in Illinois at colememo.com/isitlegal.
I have been a staunch.
All right, folks, that's about enough of that. You can watch the full mini documentary now at colememo.com/minidoc. Let's close out the episodes. Let's close out this episode with some of your questions. Folks, thank you for tuning in to
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
Wapo, thank you for tuning in, brother. Speaking of that, I'm going to be, we were just talking about a date. Stay tuned. We're going to be doing a new live stream with the two dope dudes from the Elevated News podcast. If you don't listen to their podcast, you need to. It helps me stay up to date on news, not only in Illinois, but they have great coverage all over the country. And if I recall correctly, they may have even done something about outside of the country recently too, which is always interesting. So let's take your comments. You can also call in now at colememo.com/live. It's January 5th. Thank you for the reminder. I need to put that on my calendar. I was just about to check my texts, but I'll put that on my calendar. Some cat on the internet says, best show, Cole. Thank you. Great. Yeah, it's a great episode. We wanted to just kind of focus on this subject that I'm really passionate about, because I've had people comment recently like, oh, you talk a lot about industry. Like, why don't you talk? And I see the relation to what I talk about to industry, but I understand that when I step away from just this core issue, which is decriminalization of cannabis, it's actually super simple concept to wrap your arms around. I wanted to kind of return to my roots. Like I say, this is something I've focused on for years, and I know that I can get sort of into the weeds, pun intended, on the industry regulations and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, this is where my heart lies. And that's why I made that mini doc, which again, you can watch now at colememo.com/mini doc. So let's get to the questions. These might be irrelevant at this point, but Miggy asks, you still go into Michigan to stock up? I heard they're asking pot shops to rat out of state purchases. I have also, that was reported. What they are reporting, or what they are, what I read was that cannabis shops in Michigan are being told to report people that purchase more than their maximum amount in a day, because technically all of the dispensaries I go to, it's funny, is I complain about purchase limits and possession limits, but in Michigan, there's only transaction limits. So like if I've gone and bought like a lot of cannabis, and they just have to break it up into several transactions, and they can do that, and they can still do that to this day. However, I guess if they do that, based on what I read, if they do that, if an out-of-stater does multiple transactions, they're supposed to report it to the police. And I don't know what that ends up actually. I don't know what, happens. It'll be interesting to see if there's anything that actually happens out of that. Tommy Chung had a pound of weed when he got raided. They asked why, and he said, why not? Exactly. Thank you, Miggy. This is perfect. You have a pound of sugar at home, don't you? Exactly. Satisfied Mind, thanks for tuning in. Once again, folks, if you want to call in, colememo.com/live. Cannabis Critique asks, so your math, 1,000 packs of cigs would be like 1,000 eighths, so 3,500 gram possession limit. I guess so, yeah. I don't know. I brought that up as a starting point. Hey, I remember this too. I was just telling somebody about this the other day, Kat. When I was growing up, I may have told this story on the podcast before, but it's been a while. I remember when I was growing up, and this is why I've always been so fascinated with not only the specifically the criminalization of cannabis, but just specifically how these arbitrary lines, when you cross them, the rules change. So when I was growing up, I remember going around with my parents and putting like those little signs in people's yards, when there's like an election, usually it's for like a politician. Well, this one, I guess, was for like, for lack of better words, what is that called? Like a voter referendum. The sign we were putting in people's yards was vote no on prohibition. And I remember asking my parents, what is prohibition? And they were like, Cole, prohibition is the reason that we have to drive 15 to 30 minutes away when we want to buy beer. They don't allow beer or alcohol to be sold here in this town. And I found that so fascinating. I was like, why? And then, they didn't really give me the history. Of course, I learned the history of prohibition. But it was interesting to think that you just drive 15 minutes away and then you can buy something that was not allowed to be sold where I was from. And then when I turned 21, I remember laying in my bed one night Bow, chicka, wow, wow. You don't know where I'm going with this one. I was laying in my bed one night and I was like, wow, I'm 21. This kind of feels anticlimactic. Like I had my first beer, right? With my family and friends, and several other people bought me some beer that night. But it didn't feel like, woo, 21, that whole like cliche idea. And I was thinking about it, and I had just done a trip to Maryland recently, which was about 12 hours away. About probably a little more, I don't know, give or take. And I was thinking about it. I was like, how far away is Colorado? And I looked up and it said like something like 15 to 16 hours away. I was like, fuck it. So the next day after I got off work, I think it was a Thursday. So the next day it was a Friday. I got off work. I had my car all packed up. And that night I popped an Adderall and drove to fucking Colorado. And it was cool because I drove there with weed because of course. But at the time, I should say that cannabis was only legal medically in the state of Illinois. I didn't have my medical card at the time. I don't even know what the program looked like. Actually, I do know what the program looked like at the time because I wanted to apply for my med card, but they required fingerprints and a background check and a bunch of fucking shit that I would not do even still to this day. And I'm glad I never had to do. It's really crazy. Anyways, I drove there and I remember this feeling of relief when I saw the Colorado state line. And I had this idea that like everything in my car now was legal. Of course, that may not have been so true since I, basically just committed cross-country interstate trafficking. However, the idea, you get what I'm saying, right? And it brought me back to childhood. It was like, wow, I just passed an imaginary line and all of a sudden the rules changed. That's crazy. So thank you for bringing up some memories with that comment. Yeah, Miggy says, damn, I've been to dry towns in the state. Blows my mind. It's funny. On my way back from Colorado, I drove through a gas station. I was going to stop at a friend's house. I don't remember what state I was in. Probably Kansas, because fucking Kansas. I stopped in a gas station and they didn't sell beer cold. Where I come from, cornbread and chicken. You guys heard, sorry, country songs. Where I come from, they sell beer cold. In fact, they sell hard liquor cold, baby. Let's fucking go. I just noticed that the other day. I went to a gas station and they had like Fireball in the walk-in fridge. I was like, damn, that's pretty fucking cool. But anyways, where I come from, you can buy cold beer anywhere, by the way. Gas stations, grocery stores, whatever. You can buy beer at a laundromat. There's a laundromat nearby. You can go gamble and drink while you do your laundry, right? I go into this gas station in like fucking Kansas and all the beers fucking, I'm like, where's the cooler? He's like, oh, he like looked at me like I was crazy. He's like, you can't sell beer cold. He's like, that's why we got the ice machine right there and the foam coolers. So you buy the foam cooler, you put your beer in the cooler, you dump ice on it, and you get loophole cold beer. It's a loophole, right? It's like people thinking rescheduling it is in-game. There's much more to do. Absolutely. Well said. I guess there would still be debate on what constitute as weed in that total weight. I can't remember what you might have been talking about here, but maybe we were talking about the joints and like whether or not like the paper and crutches would filter into that final weight. I don't know. Flash C4 says in Ohio, DeWine signed Senate Bill 56 today. So I've got 90 days before I can't possess anything from out of state. We're making a run on Monday. I saw that law. That's such a stupid law. Yeah, and Guapo has a good response. Just keep your local dispensary packages, or just bite the bullet and go buy some local dispensary packages. That's what a lot of people do here in Illinois. They're not going to prove that you didn't get that from the dispensary. So be careful though. Of course, that's not legal advice. 200 milligrams for $3. Yeah, dude, I love Michigan for that. Go get like 50, 60 packs of gummies, $3 a pop. That's what the fuck I'm talking about. And like you say, in Ohio or in Illinois, That'd be like 25, 35 bucks. The prices have come down a little bit in Illinois, but there's still no $3 a pack, 200 milligrams. So he said this is when he became Cowboy Cole. Gangster as fuck. Yep. People are saying they grow their own. Warm beer should be a crime in and of itself. Yeah, dude, that should be illegal to sell that shit. And I think you should be able to sell a lot of things in a gas station. I have multiple sclerosis and was very fortunate the medical program came to Illinois, even with the fingerprint background check, LOL. Yeah, no, I mean, I know plenty of people with the same story. I wasn't trying to knock it. It is what it is. So, well, folks, I am really glad you tuned into this live stream. Cowboy Cole. Let's see here. I think I got a little bit of Cowboy Cole. Here's Cowboy Cole, if folks are wondering. Is there any crazy stories?
Nothing too crazy for me. Somebody came in recently and asked me to pee in a cup.
It's Cole Preston. This is Bella's Hacienda. It's a licensed brothel in the state of Nevada. Let's go inside.
I just stood in the shower and peed in the cup.
And that's it?
Yeah.
So they said, so
I just want to see you pee in the cup.
And did they ask for the cup, or?
You can watch my entire series on the legal sex industry as it exists today in Nevada at colememo.com/sex.
Hell fucking yeah, dude. That's when I became Cowboy Cole. That's absolutely right. Well, yeah, dude, that's the question. Did they ask for the cup? Did they ask for the cup? It's crazy shit. It's funny. So this new background, just before I go, this new background that I built has little knickknacks and paddywhacks to get dedicated to the show. And this section right here is my my pimp section, right? So we've got the Art of the Pimp book written by a pimp. We've got some DVDs on one of the brothels that I went and visited. We've got a book that was written by one of the sex workers that came on my show. And because, it's funny is, yeah, Cole looking for the cup? Literally, so a lot of people have asked me, did you procure any services while you were out at the brothels? First of all, I was there with my girlfriend. So no. But I did buy something from the brothel. Speaking of cups, whoa, there goes my books. That's what I bought from the brothel. Yeah, there we go. Focus is in there. Somebody just asked about the DEA cup. This stuff back here. The DEA hat. This is from Hamilton Morris. I bought this hat from Hamilton Morris. Somebody I actually met in Denver, Colorado. And it basically says, yeah, the DEA is a terrorist organization. And I agree with that. They've been fucking families up for years. Fucking everything up, man. Whoa. The whole background's falling apart. I'm fucking with things. This other hat is actually from our friend, Cannabis Critique. This hat here in the corner, you kind of can't see it, but Matt McCusker's twin. That is a I like Matt McCusker. He's a funny person. Mike G to God says frightening. What's frightening? Oh, the DEA, yeah. Buying something at the brothel, you might bring home a surprise. Yep. Like I say, I saw that cup when I was doing research on some of the brothels we were going to go to. That specific brothel did not invite us, but I went anyway, and they were not happy about that, but that's okay. They were one of the most famous brothels, like they were on HBO and everything, so I wanted to go and visit them. We've got more episodes, by the way, in that legal sex series that's going to be set to come out. But enough about that. When I saw this cup, I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to buy that fucking coffee cup. And I did. I brought it home. So, all right. Well, that's the episode, I think, folks. I hope you found value in this episode, and I guess we will see you next time on
The Cole Memo.
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 The Cole Memorandums.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo. This drug is dangerous. You cannot play with it. It's not funny. It's not something to laugh about. Good people don't smoke marijuana.